Well, welcome to the week ahead. I'm Vincent Wong. Next to me is your guest host, Andrew Work. Hi, Andrew.
How you doing, Vincent? Good to see you.
Thank you. So Monday.
Yes.
Let's review what happened for the last 7 days.
Okay.
I think your prediction is right. The chief executive, CY Leung, have said absolutely nothing on Snowden.
Nada.
And he reconfirmed it 7 times.
Yes, yes. We were absolutely right. Our crystal ball was spot on that one. Not the toughest prediction I've ever made. So,
but I think the sad thing is that he wants to go all the way to meet Bloomberg.
Yes.
And unfortunately, he does not have this opportunity.
What
a waste.
Yeah. It was a big trip to New York and a great chance for Hong Kong to be in the world spotlight. And obviously, they were there on a particular mission, but events overtook them.
Yeah. Well, we are still a spotlight, though.
Yes,
we are still a spotlight, though, but
yes,
not because of CY Leung, but because of Snowden.
Yes, Snowden has become front and center, and that's very interesting. We'll get to that because I think that's going to be a lot of the talk this week. But I'll give you a couple of the updates from things that we were looking at last week. Let's see. First of all, the big ticket, the big money items. The Hong Kong government is putting $5 billion into the environment. That's not going to be money they're going to spend, but it's going to be money they're going to put in with the HKMA, and the proceeds of that fund are going to go to fund groups in the community that are supporting environmental initiatives in Hong Kong. So that's one of the big ticket items. The second one, the build-out of the ferry piers to kind of raise the levels there and put another 3 levels for retail, that was denied.
Really?
By LegCo, yes. Other projects approved, that one was denied.
Oh, why?
Yeah. Legislators just weren't up for it. They looked at it and said, no, we don't think that we want more construction, more retail on our waterfront and have this unsightly 3 levels there. And I think it's going to have a lot of impact for the ferry companies and for the people living in the islands and how much they pay for their services.
So, all right.
Yeah.
So this will greatly affect the services of ferries because now that they only have one major revenue source from the passenger.
Yeah.
So we will have to monitor that and see what happens.
I think the ferry companies are going to have to come up with another solution. And, if they don't want to see fees going up and services decreased, the ferry companies are going to have to look at other options and see what they can do. Maybe 1 floor per ferry would be acceptable. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board.
Okay, so while the camera stays there, I would also like to ask one very important issue.
Sure.
Last week, which is a very big ticket item.
Yes.
I think we are spending like 22 billion?
22 billion Hong Kong
helicopters, right?
7 new helicopters. That's right. That's right. So we identified that as one of the big ticket items. It was approved, and so Hong Kong is going to be getting new helicopters.
Okay.
Yes, I can only imagine what the commission is like on that for some helicopter salesmen.
Yeah, so we got that?
Oh, that's approved. Yes, so we will be getting some new...
All right, so we have a lot of new helicopters. The reason I say that is because I met some government officials from the GFS, the Government Flying Services, about 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Okay.
And they told me that the helicopters are pretty old, so they need new helicopters.
Yeah.
But they also told me that they are actually a very unique department.
Yes.
When compared to other departments around the world. Because they do VIP services.
Yeah.
They took VIPs across town.
Yeah.
They also do rescue services, both in town and offshore.
Yeah.
Whereas in some part of the world, the offshore rescue team is a different set of, it's a different team of helicopters.
Yeah.
And they also do ambulance and also fire services.
Yeah, all in one.
All in one.
All in one
service. So it's a very interesting integrated system. It's kind of like a Victorinox Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
They can pan out a lot of things.
You need this helicopter, that helicopter, just pull it out.
And 22 billion
for new choppers.
Yeah, is not a small amount.
No.
And I wonder whether they will take up more VIPs across town and whether this will partially be a reason that this item is going through relatively smoothly.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye out and see what the interior fittings on these helicopters are like. If they're equipped for people in stretchers, being ambulance or rescue, or if they're outfitted with leather interiors and minibars. I guess that'll be the one to keep an eye on.
But it's a gem in Hong Kong, the GFS. I really believe that they're doing quite a good job.
Okay.
All right.
Excellent.
What else? What else happened last week?
Let's see. The government did approve the ability for people living in places like Guangzhou to get their old age allowance. And,
okay.
And to continue to qualify for it, even if they are too sick to come back to Hong Kong, to prove They're still alive. And the Secretary for Labor and Welfare, Matthew Chung, said that we can expect this to be ready to go by November.
Oh, okay.
So, we're definitely getting some advancement on that.
Okay. So this is possibly one of the few items related to the interaction between mainland and Hong Kong, which does not attract huge attacks.
It just makes too much sense if somebody's on a reduced income, whether it's their own income or the government, and they want to live in have a little bit of a better lifestyle by living in a lower cost environment.
Okay.
And lower cost is not Hong Kong. Then Guangzhou seems quite sensible.
Well, speaking of living costs, there is an item on housing related to the housing taxes, right?
Oh, yeah. Of course. The big one that we identified last week, and of course it was big, whether it was protests or in LegCo, was the stamp duties, whether it's the buyer stamp duty, the special stamp duty, the double stamp duty. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that think that we're being stamp dutied to death. And there were protests on the Monday of last week. Then LegCo, we had deputations coming into LegCo from local organizations, from buyers, from agencies, from foreign chambers talking about the buyer stamp duty and the double stamp duty. There was one case in particular, the organization, full disclosure, I used to work for the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, was talking about it, and I think one of their members, who has been in Hong Kong over 100 years, is having to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in extra tax when clearly they're not part of the problem that everybody was talking about, which was speculative buying. And so this was one of the leading examples, and of course that goes right down to even small businesses buying to help expand their businesses. If they're trying to stop speculative buying, was what a lot of the presentations were saying, why are you penalizing people that are in Hong Kong for the long term?
Recollect.
So that was one of the big things, and I think that will continue to be a big issue, and people are going to fight the government on that.
Anything we have missed out last week?
I think one of the big ones that kind of snuck in there, we didn't even have it on our radar.
All right.
But the OGCIO.
IT again.
IT again, yeah. Back to IT. Yes, IT. It's the big one.
So the office, the government office of the Chief Information Officer.
That's right. The Chief Information Officer. He could be called the CTO. He's the head of technology for Hong Kong.
All right.
And also information dissemination, which is interesting. But
so he hacked in LegCo and added an item to it.
Yeah, he did. He kind of, he legislatively hacked in there. But he came in and presented and said that what the CIO was going to be looking at in the future, one of their big drives was going to be on the Internet of Things.
All right.
Okay? A lot of people haven't heard this term, but it means the Internet being embedded in devices and everything around it. So it could be, maybe hooked up Wi-Fi through your air conditioner.
My mug.
Your mug.
Yeah.
Maybe your mug. Parking meters.
Yeah.
Water meters, so that the government knows what's going on everywhere all the time, collecting data. And, for example, if it's electricity, if it's in your air conditioner or your electricity meter, then they can help balance the flow of electricity across Hong Kong better, for example. And I think that's a really interesting one because, of course, once that data is collected, is the government going to keep it or are they going to give it up? Right? And then you get into different issues that surround what we call open data, which is something we're looking at Harvard Times. So the Internet of Things is one for people to watch out for, and I think there could be business opportunities, there could be open data opportunities, better government opportunities in terms of how that data is collected and how it's used.
What's the experience in the States now that we have compared the U.S. monitoring system in IT and also their work in China and
well, there's one really interesting case in the United States, and going to, this goes more to open data.
All right.
But this makes it more possible. But where the government in the state of Tennessee was publicizing everybody's water bills, right?
Okay.
If we have the Internet of Things, we can do that real time. But they were publicizing everybody's utility bills, and so that included water, electricity. And there was a group in Tennessee that got a hold of Al Gore.
All right.
Inconvenient Truth, global warming, reduce your energy, save the planet. Everybody knows him. So they got a hold of his electricity bills for his personal household. It turned out his electricity consumption was 11 times that of the average household. And I mean, the media had a field day with that one.
This is an inconvenient truth.
It was very inconvenient for Al Gore. Right. So, if we start having the Internet of Things, is the data going to be kept private or is it going to be public? And I tell you, it was very inconvenient for Al Gore, but I think people are going to have a look at.
But I think it's quite good for policy formulation. But to do that successfully, I think the government needs to use the Internet of Things to monitor themselves.
Yes.
Let's say monitor the energy consumption in the in the central government office.
Yeah.
And then use that to build trust with the community.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether they have this political wisdom because usually they try to duck that rather than to embrace that.
We'll have to see. Openness is getting to be a really big issue in government. I think transparency is on the agenda for Hong Kong, and people are interested in knowing what their government officials are up to.
All right. So that's it so far for last week?
The only other thing that we talked about was the government is still, they met in LegCo last week to go to the second reading of something called the TIEA. And what that is, Tax Information Exchange Agreement, which means when Hong Kong government gets a request from a foreign jurisdiction to say, we want to look at somebody's bank accounts, we want to look at their financial data, will the Hong Kong government give that up? Given that Hong Kong already has agreements with almost every respectable OECD country, the only country that's really going to benefit from that, that's going to want to look into people's bank accounts here, is the U.S. government. We did a story on that in our launch edition, and it's ongoing, and the U.S. government wants to see people's data, which by now we all know is a pretty common theme in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
They want to know what's going on with everybody everywhere, and that gets into the week ahead.
Okay.
And the Snowden case, right? Which when you and I last met had just exploded onto the scene.
Yeah.
It's gotten bigger and bigger.
So what happened to the TIEA discussion last week?
The TIEA, it is moving ahead unless somebody now throws a spoke in the wheels. Last week they were in what was called the second reading, which means it's almost a done deal. The Snowden case could give the government pause to reevaluate how we relate to the United States and what kind of information we agree to hand over to them.
So the purpose of the TIEA originally is to allow the rich countries, I would say,
pretty much,
including the U.S.,
yep,
to look into someone's bank account in order to try to find out money laundering or other susceptible financial transactions.
In the old days, it was about money laundering, criminal activity. It was about terrorism, of course. But now, with these deficit-ridden countries, they're looking for money wherever they can. So tax evasion has become the big impetus behind that. Again, Hong Kong already has agreements with pretty much everybody except the United States and Australia. So they're the ones that are going to benefit from being unilaterally. Like, Hong Kong will not have the right to make the same request to the United States after this, which is a little questionable. With other countries, it's a two-way street. Okay. With this, it's just the U.S. and Australia getting into try and track down people they want. The question is, now, with what we now know about how much information the U.S. government collects and about how they collect it, does Hong Kong want to give that information up? Do we still trust them? And that's true. I think, is going to be the question in politics the week ahead.
But, even if we didn't give the TIEA to them, they might even hack into our system and find out that. Find that out.
Yeah. I think what people are finding now is that the American government doesn't have to hack. No, apparently there has been hacking into our systems, but they don't even have to do that because you send an email, you don't know where it's routed.
Yeah.
It could go anywhere in the world.
That's
if
true.
you like I said last time, we run our company off of Google Apps. Probably there's one of the 3 or 4 repositories of our information because they have to back up a backup. Probably 1 or 2 of them are in the United States. They don't have to go to Hong Kong.
Okay.
They can get it here. So that's going to be big for the people of Hong Kong.
Okay, the week ahead, besides Snowden, what else?
Besides Snowden, everybody else is talking about it. We'll look at some of the other things. Today, the Subcommittee on Poverty is going to talk about their research mission, originally Sweden and Finland. People questioned that and said, really? What are you guys going to learn? How are they like us? Do you really need to spend all that money going to places that are completely different from Hong Kong? Today, they're likely going to confirm that they have reconsidered and are going to look at Japan and Taiwan, closer to home, perhaps a little more relevant to our own situation. So that'll be happening today, and they'll likely confirm that. Public service is going to be continuing to look at pay raises. Another one for people to keep an eye on. With the pay scale mechanism for civil servants has been in place for decades, and now the civil servants have had it. They're pulling out of the review board for this. They're saying they don't agree with it anymore. The government is not playing fair. And I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch, where the public falls on this one. A lot of people see the civil servants as having, a lot of job security the rest of us don't have. So they're saying, really, can you guys complain? You should be getting the same as government that's been perceived as fair, or the same as the private sector. That's been perceived as fair for a long time. And it's going to be in play today in the Public Service Committee meeting. Keep an eye on that one, for sure. What else is going on? Constitutional Affairs is going to meet today. And, a lot of people are saying the government isn't doing enough. And they haven't launched the consultations to determine how we're going to change LegCo elections in 2016, the CE election in 2017. They're saying more has to be done faster. The government today is going to say, we are going to study the issue in other places, how other countries do it. I suspect there are going to be legislators that are saying that is not enough. It's not fast enough. We already know. We've done all the studies. Now is the time for action here in Hong Kong. That's my prediction of the week. I think that's a fairly safe one. I had some safe ones last week that all came true. We'll see if they're safe again.
But
those
is there any reason for the stalling, you think?
If you stall, then you can probably avoid making major changes for 2016, 2017, and put them off for another 5 years. Rapid change is uncomfortable for a lot of people. People in government, they're not known for moving fast. It's a big machine. So stalling means that, we looked at it. Sorry, we couldn't do anything in time. We've still got 2022.
Yeah, by that I mean, do you think is it the Chinese government?
There's a stalling,
or is it the Hong Kong government?
Hard to say. We have a columnist at Harbour Times, Johnny Lau. We're the only guys publishing Johnny Lau in English. Of course, he's well known in the Cantonese community. He's better equipped to answer those questions than I am. He's got his finger on the pulse of the Chinese community. I think that everybody in government, top to bottom, just wants to move slowly on everything. They are under the gun, they are under the microscope. Nobody wants to move quickly, and I think change scares them a little bit. I think it's a little frightening for most people.
Okay,
particularly for them.
So basically, it's a stalling battle. We'll see.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people feel, and I can't disagree with that. Other issues today: Hong Kong, get ready to pay more for your plastic bags.
All right.
The 50-cent tax. It's not really more, but in more places. So right now, the big guns, you go to Park and Shop Welcome, and now they're always like, do you want the plastic bag?
They haven't passed that? I thought they have passed that.
Tuesday, they're going to be expanding the range of outlets.
But it was back in Donald Trum's era, I think.
Well, people have noticed, if you go to Park and Shop Welcome, they're being forced to impose this levy on you. Now they're going to be bringing it to a lot more retailers.
All right.
So people don't get mad at the retailers. They're not ripping you off. It's going to be the new law. All right?
Okay.
And the interesting thing is that the retailers kind of the little thing that's in it for them is that they collect it and they have to pay to the government later. So it's almost like a little form of financing for them, mini financing. I still think retailers are not going to be happy about it. There's a little tiny something in there for it. And then they collect a little form of financing.
We'll see the effect.
Friday, big ticket items, always on a Friday. That's when the government splashes out the big money.
All right.
$15 billion this Friday for the Community Care Fund out of the Finance Committee. Again, really big ticket items. The only thing that was bigger last week was helicopters. So keep an eye out for that $15 billion to go to the Community Care Fund. On Saturday, teachers, they're going to be talking about the education committees about the problems that teachers are having, about teacher-to-student ratios in the secondary schools. Fact of the matter is, our student population is shrinking. Teachers are finding it harder and harder to get jobs. Given that this was a foreseeable problem, it makes you wonder why we're not shrinking the number of places in schools for people to get educated to be teachers. Like, we should just be saying, fewer students, fewer teachers. Of course, the teachers are pushing to expand, the student-to-teacher ratio. More students, fewer students in the classroom for more teachers, because that's how they got to try and save jobs. So that's going to be in play on Saturday.
I do agree with you completely. I think the roots of the problem is that we keep training more and more teachers. And a lot of the newly graduated teachers will be very difficult to find jobs.
Yeah. People are making decisions about their future when they're 16, 17 years old. They're very idealistic. I want to be a teacher. I want to help kids.
Yeah.
Nobody tells them, hey, by the way, there's fewer students, and there will be fewer when you graduate, and it's going to be tough to get a job. Somebody should be telling the kids that now.
Yeah, and I think they should reduce the supply of teachers, definitely.
Reduce the supply of teachers. And, if they make it harder to get an education program, we might get better teachers.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And we could end up with an elite of teachers, but keep an eye out on Saturday to see how that discussion goes.
All right. Anything on the weekend that we should look out for?
Oh, that is on Saturday, so that is the weekend. After that, I think everybody involved in politics is going to be pretty worn out, and they're going to need a day off, but I don't think the Snowden and the media are going to give them a day off. I think that story's got legs.
Yes, and then I think next week we should focus more on what happens when the Lashko is counting down to the 1st of July.
Yes.
Yeah. And that will be what we'll be looking at. But thank you, Andrew.
All right. Thank you very much for having me in today, Vincent.
All right.
Cheers.
Okay.